Happy Thursday, folks. How's everybody's week going so far?
Happy Thursday. Busy.
Busy week. I'm just imagining right now, Tionon is probably frantically updating Go packages. Hey there, Jory.
Hello.
Yeah, I forgot it's go day.
It is Go Day. I just saw their announcement hit the Slack a little bit before this, so I think it's gonna be my afternoon going and patching updates. So, all right, I think we at least got the key people here, so we can probably do a little soft start on this. Let's see. Gonna get some things organized here so we can chat. Alrighty. So we got a few things on the agenda today. And if we're missing anything that folks want to chat about, feel free, add it to the agenda. If you don't know the HackMDs, ask in the chat. One of us will fill you in on it. It's also in the media invite, I think, that most people are following. And let's see. I'll just run through real quick. We got a few things sitting in the review queue still. So one for adding a digest algorithm when you do a non-canonical blob patch. This is handling the case when somebody does a blob patch request, uses a different algorithm than SHA-256, and they're sending all the chunks, and then you don't get the digest until the very last chunk or even after the last chunk. So this gives you a way that the client can at least give a hint to the server of what algorithm it's going to use at the end. Conformance test redesign, that one's still sitting out there. That's been sitting there for a while, and I think it's going to take a while for people to get a chance to review it, but it would be good if folks have a chance to do that because I think that'll become blocking at a certain point for us if we want to do a release here sometime. This one Tianon pushed out there the other day. I've got this on the queue to chat about a little bit later on, but that's also out there. So we'll circle back to this one in a second. And then Jeff decided to bless us with a whole new API. So
Two.
this two of them out there. I haven't even gotten to your second one yet, but this one's sitting there. Holy cow, Mike's even here now. I need to pay attention. People are joining the meeting when I'm chatting away. Good to see you again, Mike. Let me add you to the people that are here. And you're confusing because you still say Michael. That's just, I can't handle this. Cannot handle. All right. Good to see you and Saja here today. So let's see. The tag history that Jeff has, I want to try playing around with this on my side before I put my own review on it. I think I just commented on a few little small changes, but
I made one new change to it today, which is maybe worth calling out and discussing because I don't know that I don't love it. I don't hate it, but that's kind of just how I feel about the spec in general, so maybe that's normal. Um, no, I was talking with the major addition to it was talking with Tianan and John about tag history and it's sort of the idea of handling deletes. So I added in a bullet in there for if a manifest digest is deleted, it should not be removed from history. The history should still remove or the history should still report every digest that the tag pointed at, even if that digest is no longer pullable, just to kind of maintain a audit history of what it did point at. And then the one that's less clear is sort of the case where a tag is deleted and then repushed later. Um, and I put a example in there. I think if you scroll down a little bit, I'm piggybacking on the empty descriptor. So yeah, scroll up a tiny bit. It's right in there. So we have a tag created, then we have a tag deleted using an empty descriptor, which I don't love, but it satisfies setting a descriptor and a list of descriptor responses, and then when like the tag is repushed again, so that way you can sort of still build up the history of when a tag was there, when it was removed, and then when it was pushed again.
You've got me in deep thought because I definitely don't like it, but I don't know what I want to do instead.
That's where I've been for the last 24 hours. Alternatively, I can set a naked annotations and just not set a media type, size, or digest. Or
You
uh,
added an annotation here that says tag deleted. Why not put that annotation on the later entry that was deleted?
that I did think about doing that. The con I think the confusion there was then we're saying it's kind of unclear what this is referring to. Is this like the digest is deleted? Is the tag deleted? Um, it's deleted. It's not pointing at anything, so therefore it's not really an accurate representation of the descriptor being gone or the tag. It's kind of confusing as to what it's pointed to because a delete event is not really tied to a digest. It's kind of nothing. I don't know. It's a removal.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
to the
just having
registry,
it having it point to the last descriptor it pointed to was also an option. So
I mean, from the registry's view, when you delete something, you're either deleting a tag or you're deleting a digest, right? So it does know that you're deleting something on the registry side.
no, I can go either way on that one. I mean, I think it could be fair to point it at the previous digest.
And what we're looking at in this one is just the history of tag actions. So this is only that you had a tag that if you say deleted, I would think, are you saying in this case when you say tag, you probably defined it somewhere else and haven't had a chance to read it, but are you saying deleted here is that the underlying manifest digest was deleted or that the tag itself was deleted when you use that annotation?
This is purely the tag. This even like the created is not based off of when the digest was created. This is purely based off of the tag values.
Yeah. So I would say that since this is when the tag was deleted, I mean, personally, I wouldn't say that it's the empty digest that you're deleting. You're deleting the pointer that was going to some given digest. And in
Yeah.
that case, I could see you overlapping them, just saying it's the same thing if you deleted and didn't recreate something else in the place. I could see two entries, I could see one entry. I can go either way with that.
And it is the tag history API, so it wouldn't make sense for this to reflect manifest deletion events. Only
Well,
tag deletion events, which might have been caused by manifest deletion events, but they are tag
yeah,
deletion events.
that's kind of where I was going with it was I was wondering if we were talking about the underlying manifest getting deleted out from under the tag, which triggers a tag delete. But I like this better if we're just talking about tags themselves. Yeah, I've got a review I'm going to need to submit on this one. Not bad. I just need to get some feedback in there. All right. Anyone else have thoughts on this you want to chat about? Stunned silence.
I did drop it in the chat. I think pointing to the manifest value, the manifest digest that the tag was when it was deleted with the annotation is seems probably the easiest thing to understand. Otherwise, where did this hash come from? Becomes the next question.
Yeah. And technically, you can never have a tag that points to the empty descriptor unless we make the empty descriptor a valid manifest. All right. You gave us stuff to think about on that one, Jeff.
That's my goal.
All right. Another one sitting here in the queue. Go, Mike. What do you
So
got?
as far as the before, this timestamp kind of thing for the pagination effort, um, I think there's also a valid use case for PubSub type subscriptions to changes to tags for a particular digest. Um, just saying that was of interest to us in the past, and this API doesn't support that particular use case, but it's introducing something that should, I think. Um, so you might want to look at, or at least consider, a sense option to the API. In other words, if the client already has the tag history, it should be able to say, can you give me the tags that have been added since?
You want the newer tags?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm keeping my own cached list from this particular URL endpoint, the registry.
Are there client scenarios you can think of where they wouldn't want to know the most current tag first?
No, I think that's the way it works, right? If I say I want colon latest, but come to colon latest is just not it's got its own issues, right?
No, I'm just kind of going through the mental process right now. If I was querying a history and I
Yeah.
knew the history from last week and I wanted to refresh my database, is there a scenario on my side that I would want to know stuff from last week up to maybe Tuesday, but wouldn't want to know the stuff that happened today? I'm trying to think through the scenario. Is there a case where I wouldn't want to go, give me everything starting today, and then I'll let you know when I don't need any more data?
That works.
Because that's the way this is currently written, and I feel like that falls in the scenario
Well,
pretty
but you
well.
got to start over. Yeah, you got to start from scratch and then go
But
until you.
well, you start from the latest, and then as soon as you hit a
Right.
tag that you've already seen, you go, okay, I've caught up to that point. I don't need to query the pagination anymore. I can stop querying.
I see what you're saying. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think just doing a sense could maybe optimize things a bit more in the registry. So that way, instead of always returning the last 100, maybe only need to return the last 5 or the last 3. Um, in the grand scheme of things, is that going to matter that much? Maybe not. I don't know. It could be a little easier from the client side, but puts more work on the registry, maybe. So maybe this should keep
Maybe.
things simple. We don't.
The other thing I'm thinking of is if I was writing a client that was checking this, I would probably I would have my current value, what I think the tag points to,
Yeah.
and I would cycle through everything, just doing a head request on that tag to see, is it still pointing to the same digest I knew it was pointing to? That way I would know if I need to query the history at all. Because I'm probably querying a lot of tags, more than likely, if I'm tracking a lot of history.
Look, Jeff, there's that bulk lookup use case that gave you hives earlier today.
No thanks.
I mean, when Mike originally was saying it, my first thought was someone's got their database they're querying this constantly with. Can they do a query just to see did anything change? But going through my head, I was like, well, they probably won't query.
So it would be an empty list as opposed to, oh, here's the first, right?
Yeah, but I'll go the other direction. I think if someone was writing that tool, they would probably start with just doing a head request on the tag to see, do I need to run the query at all? Because if a manifest head comes back and says your digest, the one that you think is there is the one that's right, then I don't
Yeah.
need to query the history at all unless I'm worried that somebody swapped it rapidly in the middle, back and forth.
Right. Especially when you're talking about pulling by digest, or were you covering the other scenario as well? Image tag.
Well, this is just the tag history.
Yeah,
There is no history on a digest.
fair.
We're sneaky that way on the OCI side.
I'm seeing it more of a convention thing too, since this is an API. But yeah, okay.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else got some thoughts on this before we jump forward? Or any other things that we need to chat about? I'm going to spend some time really properly reviewing this because I'm guessing I'll have some more thoughts there as well. But overall, I really want to implement this on my site before I do a final LGTM. All right, this one's been sitting out there for a little bit. Tian or Sajay, if you've got a chance, this one's a good one to give a quick review on. I don't think it's too big of a deal. Just to look at that one, it's essentially saying that if they pass a .wh file naked by itself without what file it's actually whiting out, um, that's an error. And so if you see that in the listing there, then you should return an error. And I had it changed to should because I can think if there are cases where something may not want to error because it's not a runtime, but it's some other tool that really wants to go through and look at the layer in depth. But that one is ready for review. All right. And another easy review. Tiana had this one out there for us, which is a whole bunch of just fixing little spots where we had line wrapping done the wrong way. And so just kind of clean up the spec a little bit. So hopefully that's another quick review if folks have a chance. I would want to skip it in the runtime so as not to break existing images. Are there existing images that do this? I mean, if there are, I really hope that we shame them for being an existing image that does something that broken.
I'm sure Tina has created something around this.
He did, and I think we broke it. So I think we're documenting existing behavior.
Okay, that's great.
At least I think it was containerd. We dug through and found that, yeah, it had an issue. Think even we fixed this issue and yeah, here's Tina's image test that he's got out there. And Docker pull errored. CTR image pull errored. So yeah, we are documenting existing behavior.
That's great then.
Cool. All right. And the other one that I wanted to chat a little bit about, this one I want to circle back on, the HTTP redirects that were sitting out there in the view queue. We went back and forth on this one as to whether or not, I mean, a bunch of this PR is tweaking up all these RFC links to be consistent. They're all pointing to the RFC editor. They're all pointing to the right place over there with just keeping the syntax consistent. But we've got a line there that we added to the end of the APIs that just said, hey, all of these APIs follow HTTP specs, including the redirect. And then we had discussions. And so I think the biggest discussion right now is, do we want to say that clients must follow a redirect? Or is that too strong a language to say they must follow a redirect? And when you say may follow a redirect, should follow a redirect, that kind of thing. I'm okay if we say should. And I'm the one person that threw a green check mark on this one. And I think other people are holding up until we do say should. So
Okay. I think must is more accurate, but I will update it to should.
yeah. I mean, potentially someone's got an exception case out there. They want to block going to certain URLs. They hit a URL and see they're going to China suddenly, and they say, "Yeah, I don't want to go there." Um, Fine, but
Well, plus we're already rejecting if it goes over 10 redirects. So there's already code that doesn't follow the must, um, unless you want to qualify
Well,
it.
that is following the must, right?
well,
If you give me 11 redirects, I'm going to reject it.
The, it doesn't say you must follow all redirects to an unlimited count, unlimited number.
Exactly. It doesn't explain that. That's what I'm saying. It would require,
The
if you're going to go
RFC
to
explains
must.
that. The RFC literally already has that text.
Okay.
yeah. And so we're saying registries may respond with a redirect per the RFC, and clients must follow such redirects per the RFC. Maybe extra language. I don't. I'm not too picky there. Okay. That big long back and forth. If we settle that with a one word change and we're all happy enough with it, that just made everybody's day easier. This one came up this week. There was a question saying, "Hey, we've got an inconsistency in the spec. The spec says you must specify a tag or a digest, and then people are passing a tag at a digest, with both in there, and you can't have that per the distribution spec." And I just kind of looked at it and was like, no, that we're talking two different things here. So we got one thing that's talking about the reference string, and another thing talking about HTTP API. We're in two different worlds, and so that's why there's an inconsistency between two completely separate worlds there. So I point out that we've got an open working group request that people can join if they're interested in, that a whole bunch of people have implemented that reference string in different ways. And also the distribution spec really should probably pick a different word than reference for when we say tag or a digest, because it gets confusing when you have the reference implementations out there, like the distribution reference implementation, they call it reference specifically. And for us to make reference a different thing in our spec gets confusing. So at some point, I want to find a better word.
Yeah, just sort of interestingly, this week I ran into a problem in Kubernetes where in the case where you're saying tag latest and you don't have a and you've got a digest and you don't have whether or not pull never versus pull if not present specified in Kubernetes, then what should the default be? There's a current default, and they wanted to change that, and I was like, oh man. So I'm just saying it's
Changing the
similar.
default, that's chaos.
Exactly. That's chaos. They wanted it to be if not present would be the default instead of pull always, but we use pull always for a security measure in case you're on multi-tenant scenarios and you want to make sure that the pod has authorization against a particular image as opposed to pod, A that pulled it the first time, right?
I figured it was more of a usability thing. If any pod had, at some point in the past history, it pulled latest, and then the person updates the whole man, the what is it? Is it a Kubernetes manifest? I guess they call it the whole pod spec, whatever they're pushing out there. They change their thing. They do a kubectl apply, and it starts running the old image again. They might get confused, and so it just kind of
Right. They've got macros that modify the default pull policy in Kubernetes.
mm.
There's so that it's not just I've got this image right? It's also a poll policy that says I need to check, for example, if it's latest, if this really is the latest one, right? But they can specify digest. And there's conflict. There's a lot of conflicts in Kubernetes, just saying. And it's well documented conflicts about what happens if you're using both digest and latest tag, right? And pull always. What are you expecting here, right? Latest might not be the digest, right? It may not match. Do you want a failure there? And it's not clear in their docs on what that. So yeah, I think we might need some additional clarification in this space. But it's more of a use case thing, not a, yeah, it's not our spec.
Yeah, it's not an OCI spec,
No,
but there is a working group suggestion if people want to make it an OCI spec. So FYI, anybody wants to join in. This one did trigger a fair bit of back and forth. Tianon's got a hard block on it because he doesn't like anything I'm writing over there. I get it. This probably needs some rewording if I was to actually push to make it happen, but I don't think there's enough momentum behind it right now.
you got me
All
excited
righty.
there for a second. I thought it was the pod or the set of containers working
No,
group.
there's no pod spec over here. That's a Mike thing. Mike hadn't made the working group for that one yet.
I was just suspecting that the conflict is coming from the Kubernetes side since it was, I've seen the issue open recently. Let's put it that way.
So
I think we'd
I,
need a
I'm
container spec in OCI before we could have a pod spec.
I think from a Kubernetes perspective, the YAML is both a pod and a container spec because it's the mutations that they apply to the contents of the container.
Yes, but the OCI only has the runtime, not the full container.
Exactly. And right now we only have Kubernetes pods. We have no other types of pods in direct support, although we have K3S and Rancher type solutions out there and Podman, of course. Um, Anyways, but I digress.
I mean, I feel like you're challenging me to make another implementation of something just so we have a competing implementation to cause all
Yes.
this stuff. And no bandwidth on my side for that right now.
No, me either. I wish it was available just for the purpose of having better clarification in these kinds of spaces. The use of, right, sets of containers. The MCP groups, the agentic groups are going one direction. I know Docker's gone a different direction too. The Podman groups have gone different directions. So there already exists competing solutions in this space.
So does anybody notice people putting with all the LM stuff, people notice that they're getting requests and PRs to solve very specific problems that folks are maybe getting used to the LLM solving their one specific problem for their one application and they want to see all that stuff upstreamed without considering if there are broader use cases that they might want to encompass? Or is that just a me thing right now?
It's
There's the
all
mini
about
rant for the
it's all about context.
that,
You have to.
that go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm just saying when you're using codecs whatnot, you really need to make sure that you point it to this to the specs, right? That you're trying to adhere to as well, if you want that to be included in your in your request, in your code this for me, please request. But yeah, I've seen it already a couple times.
Yeah. That was my mini rant for the week. Something in your conversation just reminded me of people submitting the LM discussion, just reminded me of a bunch of PRs I've seen lately.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Another one that came out was someone that wanted to see us rewrite the distribution spec to be more readable. I put my 2 cents on there. It just said we'd love to, but we don't have the bandwidth.
In what
That
context? I think it was written to be readable in the view of the original Docker schema context.
So this person, they pointed to a Google thing that was talking about how it was supposed to be more readable. They did some things trying to pick words and not use wrong words when I say things. But I think some of the ideas was to make some of these definitions a little bit easier to read. But then down below, they started throwing in some other stuff in there. I think toward the end, I was like, we don't need to have screenshots of Podman inside of our spec. So I don't know what was going on there, but they made various adjustments, tweaks, and changes, and I said, okay, well, interesting. I don't think we'll go entirely that direction, but at the very least, hey, there is another PR you can follow that says that we'd love to rewrite the spec. We just don't have the bandwidth right now to do it.
Yeah, maybe ask them to split it into separate commits or separate PRs.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is once you start doing this, you kind of run into the scenario that everybody that's got an outstanding PR gets broken. You're rebasing all this stuff, so it's a big lift.
Yeah.
I kind of look at it as a stop the world kind of problem where you got to stop everybody else, do your big rewrite of the whole spec, and then you can let the PRs go back through, and it's just a pain in the butt.
I don't know if we have enough text in there to do another cleanup. Otherwise, we'll remove another half, and then what are we left with?
Well, I was thinking of splitting it into 2 files instead of just 1 file, but I'm hoping that we'll add text to it. And it would be nice if we did. 1 file would be here all the actual endpoints and how all the different parameters and headers and everything for each endpoint work. And the alternate file is here are the different workflows you will go through of I'm pushing an image. I'm going to call these 5 APIs for pushing a blob, doing this, doing that. So one is kind of here's how you use it. And the other one is as a registry implementer, here are the endpoints people are going to call with these parameters. How do I respond? Or from the client side, vice versa. All right, this nothing at all to do with OCI other than I feel like everybody in OCI that uses Go also uses JSON. And so just heads up, the V2 API is currently in likely accept over on Go. So we will probably see a V2 come down the pipe in the not too distant future. And when I did some testing with it, I saw some nice little performance improvements in it. So it might help us out on the OCI side. Yeah, Mike, what you got?
Hey, Brent. On the we can't make changes because it's too big thing. What I can't remember exactly why we don't do branches.
Why we don't do branches in what way? For like a major change?
Well, I mean, we don't push the current branch, right? We just leave it as a tag. It's in main. We don't have a 1.2 or 3, right? We're missing that.
No, we just tag, we work off
Right.
trunk-based
That's what
development.
I'm saying. So therefore, right, I know it keeps us from having to do cherry picks, but I think if you're going to
Well,
rewrite or add APIs, that could be on the main trunk and not modify the exact current specs. I know at first, if I remember correctly, we didn't want to do that because the latest was always the latest, and we wanted them to see the updates, right?
yeah, so my impression of why we're going this direction is that there's only a single thing we're ever supporting. So we're not going to go out and push a 1.2 and go back and add features to 1.1 after that. And so just because we're always developing off of the whatever the most recent branch is, and we're not going back and tweaking previous releases, previous versions with other patches out there, that we just keep it off of the main branch. And if we were to do a whole bunch of development in a branch, we could, but at some point that has to merge into main. And when that happens, we have to reconcile all the merge conflicts with all the PRs that are out there and
Fair enough.
all the PRs that were merged while we were on that trunk development. And
Got
then
it.
all the PRs that are still in flight now have to get rebased and fix up
So
all
we
their
could do
issues.
a dev branch would be fine for a major thing like rewrite. Okay.
I mean, the dev branch is kind of it is what we have as main right now. The concept that I've seen people have for dev branch is they want to have the main be able to point to whatever the current stable is, whatever the current tagged release is. We just don't have something that points to whatever the current tag release. We could make a branch or a tag or something that points to that, but I don't know. I'm trying to keep the workload smaller, not add more overhead if I can avoid it.
Fair enough.
I see Rom asking, are we envisioning a separate 1.0.x, 1.1.x, 1.2.x? I think that was what I was just answering, Rom. If I didn't cover that, let me know. But I feel like as soon as we release the 1.1.0, we're not going back to 1.0.2 and push another one out there. All right. Hopefully we get Joy back here in the not too distant future because she always has something she wants to chat about and she hadn't have a chance to say it.
Plus we have the rule to no breaking changes, right? So as long as
We
we follow
try.
that, yeah, I think we try. Yeah.
We don't always follow, but we definitely try.
All right.
All right. I feel like we went talking for 40 minutes and we saved the best for last. Jeff, what on earth did you throw at us? Adding a
Well,
new
this was
repository
me
endpoint.
taking a stab at because I was trying to find a way of how can we list repositories like catalog, but catalog is not officially in the spec, but people have it implemented, and so therefore it's sort of off limits. So this was trying to take a stab at doing a scoped catalog, um, where you can sort of pass in a namespace or some sort of a prefix to get back a scoped, somewhat scoped response of repositories on the registry, in a way that is maybe actually broadly implementable, maybe not. I don't know. This was totally a shot in the dark of is this something that's even doable? Is this even remotely on the right track? I'm not completely convinced, but
We talked about this in the past. It was usually delegated down to the issue of namespace support.
yeah, and I was yeah, because the we don't technically like yeah, the concept of like a namespace isn't really an OCI registry thing. Um, it like is and isn't like the actual naming is it allows for it being / delimited. And so I tried to account for that. Um, Not necessarily calling it namespaces, but more of a if we split the repository name by / we'll just call them like a naming segment, namespace segment. Um, and the
Hmm.
prefix passed in the repository
Thus the
must be,
OCI prefix. I got it. Yeah.
yeah, must be one or more of these.
Yeah, the spec doesn't explicitly call it out, but if you read the regular expression in the spec for name, it was clearly designed to have slash separated components. Like very explicitly designed to have slash separated components in the repository names.
I had to do some digging because I knew that we had said it somewhere, and it is that we do say that catalog is reserved today under the extensions README so that nobody tries to use it. Theoretically, that means that we could pull it out of reserved and put it on our side and try to extend it, but
Yeah, I think
just as a heads up, there be dragons.
the intent there was to prevent someone from creating a new definition for underscore catalog that's incompatible with the old definition, right?
Yeah. And nobody like Jeff would ever try to do something like that.
Yeah.
I ran away from that. I mean, I admit that I was at first a little tempted of, hey, how can I make something that's compatible with it? And then, there's not really any actual definition. So, nope.
There is a definition, but it's rubbish.
Well, and the response is yeah, I didn't really like the response. Limiting it to just a string list, isn't super helpful.
So we've got an array of objects,
Hmm.
and we say name is an object. Theoretically, we're going to make this possible to add more than just
Yeah,
name.
this was in my head, it sounded nice to allow for it to have more. Hence why I didn't like it being just a list of string names. I'd rather it be an object, so that way we could. I did not have any fantastic use cases of other things to add in there right now, but um, I like the idea of being able to add more. Or maybe that's registries may add more.
Do we have
Administrators of that sort of thing. Yeah.
do we have ways they can add more without potentially colliding with other implementations? Like if Zot starts adding some features to Zot, and then Harbor starts adding features to Harbor, Docker Hub starts adding features to Docker Hub, making sure all these names don't collide with each other.
I don't have a good pulse on that yet. This was more a
Yeah.
stub it out to start some discussions and see where it goes. Um, I think maybe there's at least some commonalities that maybe we could at least have defined in there more than just name. And then so at least if there are common fields, there is a common definition. Um, is there some sort of an extra thing? I don't know, maybe. This is a very half-baked thought.
We could go with the reverse DNS prefix we've done in other places where if I throw it in olareg, I would say org.olareg dot some feature, some parameter that I'm going to pass in is making that my name. That way I know nobody's going to collide with it. And then once other people say, hey, that's a great idea, let's add to the OCI spec. Fantastic. Not that we put in there as olareg, but that we pick a common name that everybody likes, start using it. All right. I've only skimmed this, but the one of the things I'm thinking of is security. Because I got to imagine some registries don't want people querying all the repository names when they've got multi-tenants on the same registry server.
Well, that's covered in there, or at least addressed, that the response list is going to, or just because a repository is not included does not mean it does not exist. Yeah, that kind of middle section. The list of repositories may also, or something in there, um, that it does account for
Access
access to.
control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
access.
And so when I query this API, is it going to bounce me off to an auth request to some kind of external token server more than likely, or request that send a base64 user pass? Is it going to do that? And do we need to worry about that on, I guess we don't have authentication in the spec right now, so we don't even
Just
know
say
how
that
that
goes
would,
in the auth spec. Come on, Brandon.
yeah. I mean, we don't even know how that would happen today. I'm just thinking, are we going to break clients? Are we going to implement this on the fly for this, for whoever just has to implement it first, and then, momentum gets into the all spec at some point.
Yeah, certainly when you start talking about private registries, then yeah, you need to auth first. So you know the scope of the query. But for the public images, that's a little different.
Does that mean that if I queried the public, that it wouldn't send me off to do authentication, or would it always send me off to do authentication?
I would personally put that up as an implementation detail. Um, from my perspective, representing Docker Hub, I would say this is probably the type of endpoint where I would say you must absolutely be authenticated, even if you're only pulling public content, strictly due to the amount of abuse we are likely to get from being hammered on this.
But if you're anonymous for the first 100 requests, it won't.
Depends how they implement it.
Depends how you implement it. Yep. And that could change over time. So yeah.
And here's Tian's comment that, hey, here's the catalog API for anybody who's curious about it. I was trying to think, I thought it was the tag listing API that GCR overloaded and add their own stuff coming back. But this really makes it easy to go in and add more than just repositories in the catalog response and to have other things in there.
Yeah, I think GHC or GCR does it. It's just they provide a parallel field that then you're going to have to do a one-to-one mapping.
Yeah. But I don't think they do it for catalog. I think they do it for the tag listing. I have to double check.
Yeah, it was tag listing.
But this just reminds me that, we're not stuck with saying the catalog API can only ever do this. It's designed so that it could add another field in there in parallel concurrent with it. So if you're looking for a way to reuse that endpoint, I think it is extendable without breaking it. That's where I'm going with that.
Are you thinking about things like querying users in the repository as well, or right,
more thinking about a V2. If you were to do this and you wanted to basically return the same list of repositories, but in two different formats, one that supports older clients, one that supports newer clients that has more functionality in it.
I would say the biggest thing about it, though, is going to be doing scoped repository listing, though, and no older client is likely to be set up since the original catalog endpoint is sort of no prefixing, no namespace, anything. So I think by default, they just wouldn't work with this at all anyway.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure when all this has come from the past, that one of the big things is searching. And so you got a really minimal search as best I can tell, right? We're just scoping it to registry implements may allow name. Is there a way you can pass in this? So you got the empty path, but oh, you put the name in the prefix of the path. Okay. That's where it was. Yeah, because going through my head, I'm trying to think of if we have a scope in there, is there other stuff in there people might want to search on? Because that was a big thing before, as everybody said, hey, I want to search for repositories. Maybe I want to have some kind of criteria that I'm filtering on to find repositories that match X. And whatever X is, I don't know. And so I'm just kind of throwing it out there of, is this a chance we want to make sure we're covering that, or is it just not possible?
I think I guess in my head, it would make sense that there would be some other query parameters that would be supported. Whether it is like a name filter, I don't know if I necessarily went into like media types available like that have been pushed to. I think there's a lot of things you could do, but I think it's going to be fairly limited in terms of things that the registry is realistically going to have easily accessible to query and sort and filter and whatever. So it's probably going to be fairly basic unless it's around creation or first push or latest image or the name of it. The content itself is probably going to be a lot trickier to actually implement any functionality on, so probably would be a much harder sell.
Yeah, I can definitely see people want to search within org, thinking of how registries usually lay out their structure. And so they'll have some kind of organization show me all the repos within my organization. That you've got that covered, I feel like. Someone probably wants to search for all the Helm charts, but there's no good way, like you're saying, you can't really search on a media type without getting granular within multiple media types within the same repository, and that gets complicated. Rob, I know you've thought through a search API in the past. Anything coming to mind for you? I know I'm kind of calling you out on the spot. You're usually in noisy environments, can't chat, but if you've got thoughts, feel free to chime in. This is a good opportunity for you.
Yeah, enough lumps.
Still got, were you saying you still got to think about it a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. Jeff's good at throwing those at us all the time. I like it. Getting someone that's actually trying to move the spec forward, so I appreciate it, Jeff. Anything else we want to chat about today? This was the last agenda item, I think. Plenty of review items. Everybody is probably frantically updating their Go packages. I haven't checked to see if Tianan's already gotten the Go Docker image up because that's all my dependencies are waiting on that. Anything else folks want to chat about? Going once, going twice? Okay. Well, in that case, I'll give you all 5 minutes back from the rest of your day. Appreciate it as always. Good discussion. Good updates, Jeff. And we'll be back here, same bat time, same bat channel next week. Cheers, all.
Cheers.
Well.